Hey Retroversy, Focie here. In day-to-day life, infinity is often treated as a number, but not in mathematics. Infinity is a kind of number, you see, an abstract concept. The word concept comes from the Latin word conceptum, which means to draft. Of course, an abstract concept is just that, abstract. It's not a physical place you can travel to. Or can you? Spike Chunsoft hypothesized that there are gates that lead to infinity in their interactive video game, Gates to Infinity, and is chock full of information on how to get there. Now, let's say you wanted to go there. What would infinity smell like? But let's not get ahead of ourselves here, for you see, Houston, there's a problem. You'd have to be turned into a Pokémon first. Alright, enough of the Vsauce intro. Roll the real one! Hey guys, and welcome back to Retroversy. So, as you probably understood, we're taking a look at the third entry in the Pokémon Mystery Dungeon series, at least in the West, Gates to Infinity for the 3DS. And as with the last ones, they've got no relation to each other, so if you want to start with this one, you can easily do that. Since this game is the first one on the 3DS, there are a few interesting new changes done to the series that I personally appreciate very much, and of course some I appreciate a little bit less. Let's take a look at what the general consensus of this game is first. Wait, really? It's really that bad? Holy shit, people are merciless on this game. Ooh, I'm not looking forward to this, but let's just dive right in, shall we? The first thing that happens is that you're met with a plea to save the Pokemon world, and then you have a vision of a Munna being chased by a Hydreigon, presumably the one who's going to end the world? You then stare at your reflection and get to decide what it looks like. See, there's actually no quiz that decides what Pokemon you'll be, and for me, that actually means that a little bit of the charm from the earlier ones is gone. On the other hand, it also means that I can just play with the team I want to right from the get-go without having to answer dishonestly or look up a guide or restart or anything, so I guess I can see what they were going for. Not that a quiz would be all that useful anyway. There are actually only 5 Pokemon you can choose from, which is a paltry selection compared to the previous game's 21. That of course means that there are less combinations to choose from, and this might hamper the replayability a bit for those who like experiencing the game with a myriad of different teams. Anyway, you choose which Pokemon you get turned into, and I chose a Snivy. You're then flung into the Pokemon world. Violently, holy shit, this is a dark way to enter a new world. How would anyone survive this? Is the terminal velocity of a Snivy really that small? Apparently, yes it is, because you only suffer mild dizziness. Upon opening your eyes, you're greeted by your partner, whom you also get to choose. I chose Oshawott because nobody seems to like it, but I think it's super adorable. Kind of like this game here. As is tradition, you spill the beans and tell them you're a human who turned into Pokemon. And your partner believes you, no questions asked. You then get roped into helping out with buying some land to create a paradise, and you and the other Pokemon quickly become friends and partners. It is here that the main conflict of the story gets set up. Turns out that the relationships between Pokemon are souring fast. No, not those kinds of relationships, people, come on. They're antsy, stubborn, and don't trust each other. You even get scammed by the carpenter who said he'd build a house for you. Eventually, you beat him up and you win him over big time. And you get your house, but the groundwork here has been laid. The world is going to shit because, well, nobody really knows why, but negativity seems to be the main drive here. You later get joined by a cowardly Dunsparce, a fearsome Olga, and a sort of bitchy Virizion. See, Virizion doesn't believe in the power of friendship, and he's therefore very dismissive of Dunsparce and his advances to become friends, as the game so eloquently puts it. The 5 of us start a team called the Solstice, and our adventure begins for real. Why the Solstice? Well, Snivy is a grass type and Oshawott is a water type. Boil leaves and you get tea, right? Couple that with the fact that we were at the time playing through Dark Souls 1 and Foxburrito had a little bit of crush on Slayer. So you get the Solstice. Also sounds like Solstice, which is cool too, I guess. Anyway, you're later joined by an Umbreon and an Espion too, who can apparently manipulate mystery dungeons by using their, I don't know, fucking Yu-Gi-Oh cards or something, Okay, let's be honest, the story in this game is basically just an excuse. It's pretty bad, and the game does a poor job of trying to make sense. For instance, they keep talking about how negativity is going to ruin everything, but it seems aside from the very beginning, everyone you meet behaves exemplary, trusting people with no questions asked, just like your partner believing you're a human without ever asking you anything. Or like how Swanna takes Umbrian into her care without knowing anything about him. Now, for most people, I figure that's where the game sucks the most. See, these games are for the most part played because of the story, and this one deviates from the others by having a story the game basically tells you not to think too much about. I mentioned that the story was an excuse, and I say that because the focus clearly lies in the character development. And even then, it's more concerned about developing the side characters rather than the partner character. Truthfully, your partner barely changes during the game. The partner starts out as Mother Teresa and ends the game as Mother Teresa, but you know what? That's actually alright with me. See, the previous two games focused on developing the partner. I'm alright with letting the side characters take center stage for once, because there's actually some really touching stuff in here. To me, story usually takes the backdrop for the development of the characters anyway, and that's certainly no exception here. This game requires a lot of suspension of disbelief, but once you buy into the story, I found myself really relating to the characters a lot. Even though the story kinda sucks, I do appreciate the way they present it as well. Gone are the annoying flashback sequences after every 5 goddamn minutes from the previous game, and the dialogue has been refined a great deal. The main character talks a bit more in this game, which means that the others don't drone on repeating what you supposedly just said. I mean, it still happens, but it's much less frequent than Explorers of Sky. That being said, dialogue still has that cheesy, ham-fisted feeling to it, where it sometimes feels like it's trying way too hard to be dramatic. Words like suffering and despair are thrown around like candy, and that can really take me out of the experience, to be honest. To me, those are words that are not really something to be taken lightly, but the game uses them for everything. Characters will be like, "Oh, I'm so sorry I caused so much suffering by not wanting to be friends." Damn, girl, that's a strong word for something so light. What will you use if something truly terrible happened? Like, let's say you actually got tortured or something. How would you describe that event? You just wasted suffering and despair on somebody not wanting to become friends? What? Oh well. The point is that this time around the dialogue is a bit messy, but I do feel it's a bit better overall than Explorers were. The biggest issue I have, however, is that there's no way to change the dialogue speed, and there's no way to skip the dialogue either. Now, for the most part, I'd be completely against skipping dialogue in this game, as that's where most of the charm is, but sometimes when you're just mindlessly farming, it'd be fantastic to speed up the fucking Boxbuster, for instance. Now, before I talk about the rest of the story, I'd love to talk a bit about the gameplay. See, in the Explorers of Sky video I didn't really have to say that much about it, since there were only minor tweaks since the last game. But in Gates to Infinity, the entire system has been streamlined tremendously. The hunger system is completely absent, for instance, and you also have more inventory space than ever. You also don't lose nearly as many items if you die, and max elixirs are super plentiful, so you can always restore PP if you run out. Even more so, the gummies and the IQ skills from previous games are also gone, and have been replaced by team skills that actually affect the entire team permanently, instead of something you painstakingly had to teach each member one by throwing a fucking gummy at them for hours. To me, most of these changes are welcome changes. I never thought the hunger system added anything interesting to the previous games, aside from maybe preventing you from standing in the same spot forever and farming. But I never did that in this game, and I never did that in the previous ones either, so there's not really much of a difference for me. I heard it's back again in the next installment, Super Mystery Dungeon, but I've not played that, so I can't really say if they've refined it or if I prefer that or not. I am glad that the gummies are gone though, but the game has two other things gameplay-wise that I feel are notable. For some reason, the screen seems to be zoomed in a lot more, making a lot of the dungeons feel very cramped. I'm not a big fan of this, but after a while it kinda stopped bothering me. The second notable thing is that the linked moves from previous games are also gone, replaced with an upgrade system instead. This is something I personally like a ton, because the more you use moves, the stronger, more accurate, and more plentiful they'll be. And this is also shared across all teammates who know the move in question. Experience points are also shared throughout all characters in your entire team, even the ones you don't use. All in all, Gates to Infinity makes a lot of strides in hopes of streamlining the gameplay system, and this adds a lot of great quality of life additions. On the other hand though, it has the unfortunate effect of making the game way too easy, to be honest. Every area is a complete breeze to go through, since the game also showers you with items, orange berries, orbs, that sort of stuff. That's not to say that you won't suffer some bullshit one-shot stuff every now and then, but for the most part you're gonna be a-okay throughout your 20-something hours with this game. For some reason you can also only take one job at a time in this game, as opposed to the other games which let you do multiple jobs in the same dungeons. But I got over that too. I mean, whatever, right? The game's balanced around that, so whatever. When it comes to how easy the game is, however, I must admit I'm not entirely sure how I feel about it. On one hand, I would have liked a bit more of a challenge, but on the other, it was actually nice to have a game I could sort of turn my brain off to. I also feel like the pacing is a bit better, kind of at least. There is usually not that much time in between each story segment, so you're usually not stuck days on end just doing requests day in and day out until the story progresses. But on the other hand, the story segments don't really become interesting either before you're halfway through the game. However, if you want to just do requests and dungeons, you can always just hop on over to companion mode where you can play as some other team members. I do have to admit that the formula is getting a bit stale for me at the moment. I've reached the point where I play these games almost exclusively for the story and characters anyway. Part of this comes from how the mystery dungeons themselves operate. Endless corridors with just a little bit of open space every now and then to collect whatever items are there. Due to its randomly generated nature, the areas are just uninteresting and soulless, and each dungeon serves as little more than a palette swap of the previous one. See, the gameplay never changes in these, so they wear and tear a bit over time. Especially since the AI is dumb as a box of rocks. Come on dude, I'm fucking right behind you. Luckily, the game does a little something to alleviate some of these tediums. You can, for instance, force teammates to stick behind you at all times and not ever wander. But more importantly, sometimes an entire floor is an open area where you have to solve a puzzle to move ahead. Well, I say a puzzle, but for the most part it's just hitting a switch before moving on. But it's so refreshing to be able to move freely and not on a grid. It's sort of like stretching your legs after a long car trip. May not be visually amazing, but damn, it feels great. These open areas continue until almost the end of the game, but sadly the puzzle aspect of these seem to disappear shortly before the second boss of the game, which I think is a bit sad. I'd have loved to see this part fleshed out a bit more, since their designs are much more interesting than the mystery dungeons themselves are, but there are only like 3 puzzles in the entire game. There is a breath of fresh air though, and that is that the game introduces town building and town management. Remember all that talk about building paradise? Well, you're building paradise with the materials you get from doing requests. The whole game kinda turns into Monster Hunter when not in a mystery dungeon. The first thing you do is go to the Guildmarm, who has a bulletin board with a lot of quests on them. You got gathering quests, rescue quests, hunts for bad guys, etc. Then you choose what kind of Pokemon you want to take with you on the hunt. Then you gotta go over to the item box to look at whatever items you wanna grab with you. And then you gotta eat a meal. Spin the wheel. And after all that prep, you can go out on the hunt through the quest gate. So far, this game is obviously a mixed bag, but the presentation is top-notch. The 3D models look great, but some animations can sometimes feel a little bit fast and a little bit janky. It's not a huge issue at all, but I will admit that I do find much more charm in the old sprite-based look. It's still incredibly charming though, and it looks vibrant and great as hell. The soundtrack is also fantastic, and I think I actually like the post-town music better than the treasure town music in Explorers. Yeah, I know, it's just preference. That being said, a lot of the music is very ambient, which means the tracks aren't quite as memorable as in the other games, but they fit the situations well enough, so I can't really knock the soundtrack at all. Alright, so you've been through a bunch of dungeons, recruited more and more Pokemon, and gotten through a huge chunk of the game. It's time for us to talk about the ending. Now, of course, if you don't want to be spoiled, you can always skip ahead to the time on the screen right now. We good? Okay, we good. So, I mentioned earlier that the story was rough. Really rough at times. But it's the character development which has the center stage, and that really holds true. I wish they showed more Pokemon being assholes towards each other, but as it stands, you've become a tight-knit team. You've experienced a lot of fun, but also a lot of heartbreak. Dunsparce deciding not to go up to the glacier was a particularly great moment for me, but it doesn't stop there. Your partner brings up that you were called here to save the Pokemon world, and when you've done that, you might go home. You promise, however, that you will stay, but you're only setting your partner up for some disappointment since you don't actually really know what will happen. Moreover, you've found out about your dreams. You've helped Hydreigon, who was a good guy all along and is actually someone called the Voice of Life. You've met Kyurem, who can see the future. Found out later he's the bad guy. You've picked up some Frisms, decided to try to save the world again, and you've beaten Kyurem. Time to destroy the Bitter Cold, which is a manifestation of all the negativity in the world. See what I mean with this game requiring a lot of suspension of disbelief? I must say though that I think this is the first time I've played a Pokemon game where the final boss isn't just a super good legendary Pokemon. This is just a thing, a giant snowflake. And in a very Earthbound-esque way, you beat it by having a significant portion of the Pokemon you've met along the way cheer for you. At the very least, it's an interesting concept for a last boss. Once the Bitter Cold is destroyed and the world is saved, the town throws a huge party for you guys. People are celebrating, eating, chatting well into the night, and as you take a break from it all, the Voice of Life, Hydreigon, comes and informs you that since the danger is over, you'll have to leave the world the next day in fear of upsetting the balance of the world. Now, of course, I suspected as much, but in an actually interesting twist, you decide to go in secrecy since people's memories of you would disappear as well anyway. No point in spoiling the day for them if they won't remember it tomorrow, huh? As you leave, you take a final look at Paradise. This little shabby place you built for yourselves actually does seem very quaint and paradisey after all. Being honest, this part is pretty stellar because it does something I didn't expect it to. It actually made me realize that I was going to miss this place. It made me realize that I was gonna miss the music. I was gonna miss the people. I was gonna miss the general feel-good nature of the whole place. For as shallow as the gameplay experience was, and for how much I've been complaining about it, I really do feel like the characters have grown on me a lot. As you float up into the sky, Hydreigon confesses something. He told the others I was leaving, and my partner left a Frism recording for me to listen to. This little Frism, was a punch to the gut. I felt sad about leaving, but honestly I didn't feel that bad as I'd done in the other games. But hearing Vise's words, hearing everyone's final words to me, that got to me. It was just a recording, but somehow that made it feel even more real to me. It really made me feel like I was leaving behind a family, and this was the very family thanking me for everything I'd done as I friggin' passed away. The game even punctuates this as you're soaring up towards a metaphorical heaven. It might even feel more real to me because this is the sort of thing we used to do, Foxburrito and I. We had a long distance relationship for 7 long years, and when we said goodbye at the airport, we'd leave little recordings with each other to cheer each other up a bit. Leaving always made me feel empty back then, and it's the same in this game too. You win the game, but the victory is sort of hollow, and then the credits roll. Teary-eyed, I awaited the moment where the game would just return me to the Pokemon world thanks to the wish of some plot device or other, just like in the other games, but no, the game ends, but you're gone. When you start up the game again and you begin the post-game, you don't play as you play as your partner because you're still gone. To me, this is one of the game's coolest things. It's a stroke of genius because you can actually return to the Pokemon world, but you gotta work for it. It's completely optional. The story continues a bit afterwards, where about 6 months have passed, and people have shown that they actually do remember you. I usually don't do the post-game in these kinds of games, since the magic between the characters seem to disappear. But in this game, you kind of get to feel how empty the world sort of feels without you. Whenever your partner wakes up, they look over at your bed and say nothing. No, good morning, Focie, or anything. It's incredibly subtle, but it speaks volumes to how incredibly important you feel for the partner. It really is like you've died and the partner is the spouse left behind who still makes dinner for 2 people and still sets the table for the both of you. It breaks my heart. When tasked to get you back, the partner goes alone and decides to risk their life just for the chance to get you back, and it speaks volumes to how powerful this game can be. To be perfectly honest, it really is heartbreaking. It made me cry like a little bitch. And as with the other games, that is what I'd say is the magic behind Gates to Infinity. Looking back at the reviews I saw earlier, I can kind of understand why people are so frustrated with the game. No skippable dialogue, a story which is subpar, and a character focus that doesn't really become great until halfway through the game. I can't blame a lot of the reviews for it. That being said, when all was said and done, the game really did resonate with me and I ended up having a fantastic time playing it. Yeah, it took a bit of time, but I honestly grew attached to all the characters and I remember them much better than the townsfolk from the other games due to the little extra focus on these guys. The game is different for sure, and some changes are indeed for the worst, but for me personally, it didn't hamper the experience too much. The game is still a super charming mess of a package, and due to its easier nature, I might even recommend people start with this game and then move on to the other ones later on. Like a long-distance relationship, you may not get to live together for infinity, but if you cherish what you have, you may find a gate to infinity together. And as always, thanks for watching.
So that was my incredibly messy review of Gates to Infinity. Man, was there a lot to talk about. Sorry about the silly Vsauce bits. So what do you think about the game? It seems universally hated, but I don't think it was that bad. I'd love to hear what you guys respond with. Thank you guys though so much for 1,000 subscribers. Holy crap, I'm so happy we reached this milestone. Foxburrito will make a little Monster Hunter video as a celebration, but for now the biggest news are that we got married. Yay, we're officially Man and Burrito, and I couldn't be happier. I'm also just letting you guys know that I might be opening a Patreon soon. Not gonna be a huge deal, but as of now I can't afford the Adobe subscription, so I thought I'd open one sooner or later. I'll let you guys know what I decide over on Twitter. Other than that, you look damn fine today. Keep that up. Thanks so much for your support, and I'll see you next time with another video. Ha det bra!